As the Vice President of External Relations at the UBC Graduate Student Society, my duty has really been to represent and advocate for the best interests of graduate students here at UBC. And one of the most important aspects that we get to hear from students is that there are a lot of difficulties and barriers to graduate education. Perhaps one of the most tangible ones are financial barriers. A lot of graduate student researchers are living at or near a poverty line. A typical master's degree is roughly 3 years. A PhD degree is anywhere between 5 to 7. And during that time, students are not particularly making a lot of money. Graduate education should never be a choice between having to eat or having to learn. We really want to be able to make sure that folks from all walks of life, whether economically advantaged or disadvantaged, are free to pursue graduate education, and that there are no financial barriers to doing that. And that's particularly important when we're thinking about building back better after the COVID-19 pandemic. We really want to make sure that our advanced education system is equitable, that folks have access to it, especially at a time that we're seeing a rise in people going back to school to reskill and upskill to prepare for the economy of the future. Meanwhile, the costs of living are increasing rapidly. We are seeing costs in tuition, rent, and living costs generally. All those costs and expenses, while students are making very little, ends up dissuading a lot of people from pursuing graduate education. One of the most important ways we can improve graduate education generally in our society is by removing financial barriers.
You know, we have a paradox right now in that we need graduate students more than ever before, and if you look at institutions around the world, there is insufficient funding. Graduate students are not supported personally to the level that they deserve to be supported because they're doing very, very difficult work. Often they're living in areas which are very expensive to live, and we're trying to address that, but that's something that has to go beyond the university. Governments have to support graduate education as an investment in their future, through these individuals who are developing into the leaders of tomorrow.
Graduate student researchers are really like the wheels to the car. They're the ones that are on the ground doing the research and doing the real work. They're the ones driving and pushing research innovation forward. One of the main reasons that more and more jobs are requiring a graduate degree is the rise of knowledge-driven economies. These new positions require folks that are well experienced in research, understanding data, drawing inferences from it, thinking critically, and problem solving. All key skills that are developed in graduate education.
We're well into a knowledge-based economy. So what's happening is that traditional industries are increasingly shifting to more technological ways of doing things, robotics, mechanization. The workers of yesterday are being replaced by machinery, equipment, technological advances. And so the jobs of the future are very much about how do we, in fact, keep advancing those technological improvements? How do we create new ones? How do we create new values in business? How do we create new businesses?
Every country needs innovations, especially Canada. We are such a big country and very diverse, and we have so many bright minds in the country. Innovation is so important. That's what fuels us into moving forward, into welcoming the future generations into a better world. And therefore, we cannot stop investing in graduate studies where all the bright minds creating their great ideas, being the fuels of seeds of innovations that are happening in Canada. And graduate studies is the beginning of innovation.
The rest of the world is investing enormously in innovation, and the key driver in innovation is talent. It's the people. And so if we don't invest in British Columbia and in Canada in graduate education increasingly, we'll fall behind. If you fall behind in a very rapidly moving knowledge-based economy, it's very hard to catch up. Graduate students are absolutely the key. Any jurisdiction which produces a large number of graduate students immediately has an edge in the new knowledge-based economy.
Graduate students have been the driving force in advocating for change in how we actually approach these problems. And that kind of change is going to be critical for us to move to a better place. If you think about what we've done as academia or as society up until now, it's been insufficient. There is an urgency. This is an emergency. And so the kind of urgency that comes to our approach from students, from graduate students who have expert knowledge of these situations, and their passion and their energy is the reason why I'm optimistic about the future. Otherwise, I would be much less optimistic.
So when you just think about the pandemic and all the work that has gone into managing it across the world, you think of the scientists who have used new knowledge and who have created new knowledge along the way to develop vaccines and therapies, how important that has been. We can see it now. The public health folk who led us through it, that has involved graduate education, and that has involved a kind of knowledge that you get through that critical thinking and that learning that occurs in universities. The social scientists, the economists, the business people that have helped us figure out policy and helped us figure out approaches to management of the pandemic that will balance all the interests of society. The mathematicians and statisticians who help model and predict the efficacy of different approaches were essential. The leaders in healthcare, in government, and in schools all were essential in how we function in society in terms of minimizing risk and disruption, both.
British Columbia actually lags the rest of Canada on a proportionate basis, on a per dollar of GDP per population basis. We don't invest as much as other jurisdictions in graduate studies. So we underproduce. We produce fewer graduate students than we need, fewer graduates. We produce just under 7,000 a year. The economy needs more than that, so we're a net importer. And I think to support strongly the attraction of international graduate students is critical. International graduate students will complement, it'll supplement what we most desperately need in our province and in our country, which is new, young, very talented, very motivated individuals to do well, to contribute strongly to the new country.
We have to support research because we don't know what the next pandemic is going to be. We don't know what the next challenge is, what the next societal challenge is going to be. And without having this sort of research that graduate education represents, we won't have a solution.
Let me go at it this way. COVID really underscored for us that when there's a sense of urgency, we break down barriers, we work together, we throw aside our differences, and we channel our energy toward very important, collectively important objectives. I really think that graduate education should be one of those collectively agreed urgent priorities for our society, not just for government, but for our institutions. Because in a world that is increasingly dominated by knowledge advancement, where we are increasingly sophisticated in understanding not only what works, but what doesn't work, our differences, people are polarized increasingly. I think it's absolutely critical that we develop a sense of urgency about how do we deliver the tools in society to lift the capacity of individuals to overcome all of those challenges while at the same time moving us forward in terms of inclusion, sustainability, innovation, you name it. I think this is critical, and it's not easy, and I think we need to recognize that it is urgent, that we have to spend time thinking about it, and we have to invest in it.